So good morning and welcome to the second discussion for the Rotating Books redesign discussion. And I have Ron, so let's call you Brubaker for a minute. Ron Sanders, who is the truck driver. I hope you guys all recognize him. He's probably been to your library several times. I'm Mary Beth Schaefer, and we also have Gail's joining us from her office. She's gonna chime in with her insights as well. And if you have a camera and you'd like to turn that on so we can see your pretty faces, we would appreciate that. But if you prefer to remain in the dark, I guess we can allow that as well. Okay, so you can always unmute to ask a question, or you can type it in the chat box there. Either way works, which up just up to your preference. So first, let me share my desktop. There we go. Okay. And okay, so we have our handouts from today. They are in the same folder as our January with CKLS handouts. So all the handouts that we had at the last discussion are in this folder as well. I want to kind of do an overview of what we went over last time and what we've had an email discussion, so those that weren't part of that can catch up. But first, I would like everybody to raise their hands if they can hear me. You can see raise your hand at the bottom of your screen. And let's see if I can see it. I'm not sure if I can see it with the mode I'm in right now. Let me stop share real quick. So go ahead, at the bottom of the screen, there should be a raise hand. I can't see it on my staff side, so or on my hosting side. There we go. So raise your hand if you can hear me. And when we do voting via Zoom, when it doesn't need to be paper counted or recorded that way, we will just do a raise your hand.
I needed to, up in the right side of my monitor, I needed to click the exit full screen so that I could see the full list. If you click down below on the participants 26, you're going to get a little screen off to the right, and down at the bottom of there it says mute me on the left and it says raise or lower hand on the right. That may be how you need to get to it.
Okay.
I mean, as a participant and not a room host. There we go.
Excellent, thank you. That seems to have got it. I see a lot more people raising your hands. Thank you. This is how we'll take votes for some things. For the annual meeting, we'll have to do it a little bit differently, but we're going to try every webinar that we have this year on the Tuesday with CKLS to just practice this part. So give you guys a little bit more time to raise your hands, and then I'm going to start doing our overview about the last session. Let's see. I think we have just about everybody. I think Wilson and Logan, I don't see your hands up yet, or Osborne. So that works. I think everybody gets that. I'm going to go ahead, lower your hands. Okay, now I can share my screen. Yes.
My screen, this is Norma. My screen is minimized up in the corner, and I don't know how to make it big so that I see the hand wave and all that.
Norma, this is Gail. If you look at your screen right now, you should see my beautiful face. And when Mary Beth is sharing the screen, we can't see it. This is true. But if your screen is minimized, up in the top right of the Zoom browser, there are some arrows that point outwards, and then there are some that point small, and that should help. After Mary Beth's done sharing the screen, then we'll get you back to that.
So yeah, for those of you that weren't able to do that, we'll try it again a little later, but we're gonna go ahead and continue now for doing the overview. So this is the handout. It's called, let me move my little screen here. What do I call this one? I believe it is called 2020 Rotating Book Redesign Questions. I'll put the little link here in the chat box if I can find it. I might not be able to find it today. Okay, I can't put it in the chat box right now, but I will make sure that's it's in the folder that I just linked to, and we can put it there. So the purpose of today's discussion and last week's email discussion and January's Tuesdays with CKLS discussion was to, not only discuss the state of rotating books right now, but to also explore other options for different models to continue the rotating book service, but maybe not in the same way that we've seen it. I have the wrong thing turned up here. Okay, so what we've really tried this last year, and Gail has been spearheading this, is to be very conscientious and particular about our spending here at CKLS. CKLS has the highest mill levy of the other 6 systems in the state, of all the 7 systems, and it was raised in 2016 when we thought there was going to be a mill cap, and we wanted to, get right in under there. But that mill cap never actually came. So what we're trying to do is kind of be more responsible with our, I don't want to say responsible, be more conscientious.
It is, Mary Beth, it is. It's being fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. And that mill levy got jacked way up, but it never got lowered again. And that's what we really need to look at now.
So that doesn't mean that when we come to a vote on May 22nd, that we're going to cheapen out on the truck. If you, as the voting members, as a full system board, vote to keep the current model of pick off the truck rotating book service, we're not going to cheapen out on the truck, because the things that we have on there are used. The lift is ADA compliant, but it's also safety for moving the book trucks on and off the truck. We could do a ramp, but just think of how 250 books on a book truck rolling down that ramp, what's going to happen when it's wet outside, or windy days can blow those things off course and people can get hurt. So we have to have the lift. When we had the old truck, we added the air conditioner unit that's in there in the summer. The one that it came with was not sufficient to keep the box of the truck cool. It also has a propane heater. Is that correct, Ron?
Yep.
And it does have solar panels, which actually run the lights and the music that are used at every stop. So when you have lights on in the box of the truck, when you're picking off books, those are solar powered lights running off a solar power battery. Some options that you can have that we're not going to do are like the fancy wrap that we put on the truck. It started to fade, I believe, after the second year or so. It's cracked, it's peeling. So, the wrap would not be something we would do again.
We would still do some branding, but not the wrap, because it just didn't wear long enough.
We want branding that still looks nice. We want it to still be advertising for the truck. And this would even be if we move to a different model. We want that CKLS Rotating Books truck to look nice, but we're not going to put a wrap on it that's not going to last. That's the picture of the wheat fields and the trees and the people reading. That's what the wrap is that we're talking about. So why can't we keep fixing the truck? We are fixing the truck. We've been fixing the truck for a long time, but you can only fix a truck so much before you're fixing a truck that's not worth the money you're putting into it. The next time you see the truck, take a look at it. Look at the rust that's on it. Look how it lists to the driver's side. The back doors don't seal, so that's why all your books are always dusty when they come to your library.
Right. The truck before this one had that box on it, and when the truck would wear out, they would move the box to a new truck. But because the box was not intricate to the truck, heating, air conditioning, lighting, all kinds of things were bad. There was no ADA compliance. Whatever model we use, if librarians are getting onto the truck to pull it, it must be ADA compliant fully, because it's considered a mobile branch. And so that's something that we need to bear in mind.
Thank you, Gail. So we've already replaced the engine. We've replaced the transmission once. We've had a lot of tire issues last year. Something was wrong with the wheel and it kept tearing up tires. And so we went through a lot of tires last year. So I think we replaced the engine 4 years ago, and we've had the truck for 8 years. So just by that, I would think that the engine is probably getting ready to go out again. That's why we're looking at what our options are now, is because we see that the truck is getting ready to be replaced. I'm hoping that'll last till 2020. And that's what we're moving forward with, that assumption that it's going to last that long. So with a similar truck, it's going to be $150,000 was our base unit. I got a quote from a vendor, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes, but we got a quote from a vendor for the current truck. Would be $165,000 base for what we need. But we also had to add that auxiliary AC unit just so that it would actually cool the box of the truck. I'll share those quotes in a little bit. Go ahead. I was just moving to the next question. Going to a smaller size book fan. If we keep the pick off the truck model, because we need to keep the ADA compliance, and because we need to make sure that we have enough books on the truck, so that not only do you have some to pick off at the beginning of the week, we have to load that truck to be out for a whole week. And so we need to have the space to have those books on there. Yes, when you come to we're at your stop, you give us books back and you take books off, but it's not always an equal exchange. 1 month you might pull 250 books off the truck, but you only return, 175 of them because they're all checked out, or, whatever. So we need to have a little bit of give for when those numbers aren't exact.
Mary Beth, I would go back up to number 3 about moving to the old model. And as Mary Beth touched on, that's not ADA compliant, so we can't do something like that. The shelves, the reason that we got rid of that is because the box was actually falling apart, and we would have to have that box custom made, as that one had been in the 70s. And so that would be a significant cost as well. It would be probably cheaper to buy a new bookmobile, which is what our current rotating book is. Go ahead.
Okay. So we are looking at different models right now, but of course we're just doing a preliminary look. Once the vote comes in and we know what we're actually looking for, we can get more specific and be more, know what features we need and what features we can do without. And so we can still be mindful and responsible with our funds there. I don't see any new questions in the chat, so let me know if you have any questions. So how much say will librarians have, and what type of books they like to have rotating collection? So if we do the delivery model, you would get to fill out a profile, and the profile is also in your folder. Hang on. Here is a profile. I think I need to update this for a second, because I made some changes and I haven't updated it. So let's try this. Okay. Brooke's profile example. And at first, last meeting I had kind of a rigid, you have 3 profiles and you pick which one. But from discussion, we determined that was not flexible enough and it didn't meet your needs. So this would be a profile that you fill out. Right now we have main part of the year and then summer reading, because I'm sure your needs change when you have more kids in the summer. You fill out how many you want of each genre or shelving collection, and then it totals it for you in the spreadsheet. And then what we have is a maximum of 250 books. You can get 250 books on the cart, so that would be the same amount as you had before. One option that somebody suggested was placing holds on Pathfinder, and then sending them through the courier. This would mean that you would have to do this 6 times a year for at least probably 250 books every other month. I'm not sure a lot of our libraries have the time to do that. I think that would take more time than pulling them off the truck. I'm sorry? Okay.
The other thing, oh, this is Margie. It might impact your courier stats too.
Yes, thank you. Sending more books on the courier would affect your courier stats. There's a possibility that you would get overage charges from that.
Right. The overage charges are quite significant. And if you go 1 book over or 300 books over, you still get the overage charge. And I want to say it's $4,000. I'm not sure on that. Steve, if you're listening, can you type in and say what the overage charge is for us? Our libraries cannot bear that extra expense. Even if it's $1,000,
right,
you can't bear that expense.
It would be a burden on our libraries if we did it that model. But there was the option of placing holds, and then those would be the ones we box up for the delivery model. And that might work for some cases, but I still don't see libraries having the time to do that every other month for 250 books.
To chime in on that, one thing I do think is that if you get your boxes of books and you want more mysteries or you want something like that, it's really easy at that point then to go in and place holds on specific items. And Margie, I'm going to have you chime in right now on the whole idea of a real rotating collection with Pathfinder.
Okay, so one of the features that we have in Pathfinder that we do not use is controlling the rotating collection. So what I foresee happening is, let's say Smith Center has 250 books that are sent to them, and the rotation time is, I don't know, 8 weeks. So what we will do, we would place that collection in a rotating classification. So all those books would always stay with Smith Center. So when I check that book in Great Bend, it's going to remind me that it needs to go back to Smith Center, even though it may be owned by CKLS. So it's really nice because your collection that you get stays in one place. And right now, you may start off with 300 books or 250 books, but if you have some popular items that a lot of people want and they place holds on, you could end up with 150 by the end of your rotation time. So that's something that I'm really excited to see, because it will certainly keep your collection intact that we so carefully pull and curate to give to your borrowers.
Thank you, Margie. I want to chime in for those who aren't watching the chat. Steve Coomer has told us that it's an extra $500 on the courier for any amount over 4,000, from 4,000 up to 7,000, and the overage then increases from anywhere from $500 to $1,000. So asking libraries to just place holds on the amount of books that they want to pull in for rotating is really going to jack a lot of library budgets up. And I just don't think that that's a feasible model. And yeah, I just don't think it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. So there's some other chat going on. Smith Center would like to see the profiles be able to specify what kinds of inspirational, if they need more modern or Amish or historical. And I think that's very doable with the profile that I have as the example here. Right now I just have a mix of LP, but there's space in there to put comments in there, and there's places to put comments. So I think if you need to focus on one more than the other, but there needs to be an understanding that if we don't have your 10 modern inspirational, we're going to try to fill it in with other inspirational, and if we don't have that, then we're going to fill it in with fiction that best suits those reading needs. So just because we have 57 stops that we have to deal with. This happens with the truck too. You don't always have the same books that you thought you were going to have before, or the numbers are, sometimes there's more mysteries on it than romances, and so you have to kind of shuffle, and we would have to do that the same way. Karen also noted that, I scrolled up too far. Some libraries, they would ask for books and they would be separate from the rotation, and that's fine. You can do that now. You can request books now, rotating books now that way. In the redesign notes that I was reading from just a minute ago, I did put in there the link for the lists that I have already curated. If you go to Pathfinder Central and go to lists, I have rotating books by genre that were ordered or new in 2018, and I'm doing that again for 2019. So if there's something specific that you're looking for, or you just want to see what's new in rotating books, I have those lists right there right now. And that's something I hope to continue no matter what we vote there.
Okay, Sherry from Ellenwood has a question. How would you avoid duplicating what we already have on our shelves? I guess my answer would be, we can't guarantee that. We can't. So especially with your collection, Sherry, since we don't have access to your catalog, that would be a little difficult. But I guess I want you all to think about this as a trust relationship too. I purchased for this collection for a year. Mary Beth's been doing it. And while some librarians occasionally would call me and say, hey, buy more large print historical romance, I would do that. But I didn't have a whole lot of input from librarians. So it is kind of a trust thing. So kind of think about that too in mind. Keep that in mind.
Thank you, Margie. Right now, I know that not all the time when you pick from the rotating book that you don't, when you're picking, that there aren't duplicates in your selection as well. And then sometimes, this also happens with the DVD swap, where sometimes you get DVDs that you already have on your shelf, but the ones that come from the DVD swap are the ones that your patrons see. So I don't necessarily see some duplications as a bad thing. It's just that they'll see the book and they're like, well, I didn't see it on your shelf, but I saw it here. And I don't think that duplications are going to be a big portion or a big percentage of what would be sent to you. Okay, so Karen asks, I appreciate the fiscal responsibility, but this is one way the taxpayers see their money being spent. My library doesn't have 50% of patrons using the e-formats. If the money changes over to those platforms, the patrons don't see their money being spent. I think it is important to see those things. That is a very good point, Karen, but I'm going to also counter that with, if we moved to a drop-off or delivery model, they're still going to see the book truck and they're still going to see those books on the shelf. So I would see that the visibility is still the same with either the pick off the truck or the delivery models there.
I would also add, at this point, moving the money that is spent on rotating towards e-content is not even a part of the discussion. That may be 10 years in the future, but right now we're not even talking about that. One of the reasons that I want everybody to understand, if you read my super long email last week, thank you for reading to the end of it. We have over $340,000 in our capital improvement fund right now. And that's obscene to me. The only capital as a system that we have is a very small fleet of vehicles. We have office furniture and we have technology, and we don't need that much money in a capital improvement fund. If we purchase a new truck, and as I said, I don't get to vote on it. That is the full system board voting on it. If we purchase a new truck, the money won't be there in 8 more years to do it again and again and again. And what I really mean by saying that is, while the money is there right now, it's not going to be there in the future. But that's not to say that the full system board will vote to do away with rotating. That's not one of the options. It's just, it would be a Band-Aid. The only reason we have that money, and I'll say it again, is because we jacked up the mill levy. It is way too high. We are putting way too much money into capital improvement, that fund, when we don't have a need for that. And so she says, so what are I thinking to spend some of the capital improvement funds on, is what I think Karen is asking. And right now, I'm not spending anything on that. Anything that we're spending on is coming out of our standard budget. And I think that that's something that the full system board would need to decide on, Karen. Thank you for asking. Those are good questions.
Very good questions. And keep those comments and discussion coming, because that's what this is about. So what are the benefits of a delivery? I'm going to start using the word model. I think that's, am I not talking? Oh, there we go. Okay. So I'm trying to use the word model. I think that's the clearest definition. So I apologize for mixed terms of service or that. So the delivery model, we keep track of missed stops, and those are stops where the truck arrives but nobody's there to meet the truck, so the truck is just there. We had 18 missed or late stops. So that means that if they were missed, that the truck was there and nothing happened. And if they were late, then usually that meant that then the truck was late to the following stops that day. If we had a drop-off model or a delivery model, then that would mean that we wouldn't have missed or late stops. We could do the drop-off or like the courier does. Ron's position would then be bonded, and that's just not because we think Ron is going to do anything wrong. We fully trust him, but that's just protection for him. It's protection for the system, and it's protection for the libraries. But if we did that, then he could have a key to the library and he could drop off when the library is not open.
One part of that, though, is we'll still need to be in good communication with you. That's critical for us. Years ago, CKLS did have a drop-off model, and I've heard that we were dropping off books. We dropped off books 3 times, so half a year to one library, and we picked up boxes of books. We didn't know that the librarian had died. So we need to be in good communication with you, just as you'll need to be with us if we go to the drop-off model.
Yes, and then there's, I'm going to say a few more things and then I'll answer some of the chat comments here. The other thing is that time spent on the road. Ron is now on the road 3 to 4 days a week, 3 weeks a month. Sometimes I think there's even a couple weeks where you're on the road 5 days a week. Does that sound about right with this new schedule?
Yeah, the new one.
Yeah. And so with the drop-off model, we would hope to get Ron on the road 2 to 3 days a week. And he should be able to come home most nights, if not all. There's some when you're up in the top northwest corner, the top northeast corner, that there's probably going to be nights that he stays over. But that would limit nights on the road, which I know Ron doesn't mind, but I think for a healthy long-term work, I've been on the road 3 to 4 days a week, and it wears you down. You don't know how much it wears you down until you don't have to do it anymore.
It is physically very, very difficult on a body to do that, and we want to keep our Ron in good shape, and we want to keep any employee in good shape.
Yeah, we want to create healthy working models, and you know, if we keep the current model, then we'll try to make those schedules. What we did this year is we tried to make it less generous, because we used to have 4 stops in a day, and that was really too much to do in a day, which is now we've moved to 3 stops in a day. Okay, so if we go to the drop-off system, how about putting a list of the libraries back inside the back of the book? That way they can mark off if their libraries already had that. And I'm skimming here, Joanna, so forgive me if I miss the point. So that would help us for picking books, make sure you don't get the same book back. So that would be a duplicate thing. Maybe that's what Sherry was asking about earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a very doable idea. And in this instance, it's not going backwards; it's helping us move forward. I think that would be an easy thing for us to just glue that in there and then pull it out when it's done. It would certainly be easier for us to open the book and see if it's there than to get a cart of books and scan them and see if they're in your catalog. So that's a really good idea, I think, and very doable.
Okay. Thank you for that, Joanna. And then Denise comments that she understands that CKLS concern is about 8 years from now, but librarians are working with patrons now. In 8 years, we may not want the rotating book services anymore, as our patron needs may change. Yes, we're thinking about 8 years from now, but we're also thinking about now. Is the best use of CKLS money now spending money on a new truck with the features that we need is that, and if the system board votes yes, that's the best use of the money, then excellent, that's the best use of the money. But if we look at it and decide this money could be better spent elsewhere or in different ways, this is the time to discuss that. So that's what we're looking at now. Okay, there's more information on the sheet. I encourage you to keep looking at it, but we're going to move on to the next thing.
We actually have a really good question, Mary Beth, so I'm sorry I'm jumping
Jumping
line. Karen Wallace says that she wants the small libraries to be able to have a rotating system going, and I agree with that. The bulk of our libraries are very small and they have small budgets. These libraries need to extend their budgets and provide new content for their patrons. And one of the ways that they do that, because many of them are not able to increase their budget because their community simply can't support it, is that they supplement their local collection with rotating books. And Karen wonders if we're changing the format, could a library opt out and receive compensation for not getting rotating? Do we need to look at needs for each individual library? Actually, any library can opt out of rotating at any time. We in fact have a library that has opted out. One library had opted out and has decided to join again. The actual compensation would be nothing. There's no way that we could, to break that down, we spend about $50,000 on the collection, and we have over 60 libraries that we rotate to. And so if the board decided to do that as an option for that compensation, the dollars are negligible. Right. So we really kind of need to look at that big picture. We have talked about opting out on a number of services. That is something that we've never allowed libraries to do before. And in fact, we are talking about that. And I'll talk about that extensively at Spring Forward. But it's important to understand that opting out doesn't mean you're going to get dollars as compensation for something. What that just means is you're choosing not to do a service. Just as if you choose not to send your books to CKLS to be processed, you don't get dollars for that. You're choosing not to use that service. Karen, does that make sense to you or to anybody?
Okay. Joanna is talking more about how she does the checkoff list. If there's a slow month or weather prevents people from coming to the library, she might not check that book off the list. And I think that's excellent because you as a library get to determine if you want that book back or not. So thank you for this excellent discussion. I want to show you some research we've been doing on different types of trucks and costs. I am in that same handouts folder. I went to the truck options, I think is what the folder is called. Our old vendor that did our truck last year, they still have a website, but they actually went out of business in 2017. So we're looking at a new vendor here. It's called Farber Specialty. And this is just the first vendor I've gotten in touch with. Once we know where we're going with rotating books, then I'll of course do price checking in comparison with other vendors. This one here is the book hauler, and this would be what we would be looking at for a or something similar for the drop-off model for rotating books. You see it's a big panel van, and I apologize that it's sideways. It's just the way it was given to me. But you can see it's 7 feet tall inside, so that people can still step up inside. Right now it has carts because it's a general basic model. But what we would probably do is have big square carts that have the boxes of books in there, and then that would fill the truck all the way through. There would be a lift on the back, which you don't see here, to lift those boxes of books down and cart them into the library. And this, from this vendor, starts at $80,000. The Super Duty Bookmobile, this is our current model. I think you find it looks familiar. And that's the interior as well. I have the numbers here. The current model would start out at $165,000. I'll show you the paperwork for that in just a little bit. It's 23 to 26 feet long, aluminum construction. that means it won't rust. That would be a nice advantage.
That's true, that part won't rust, but the bumper is not going to be aluminum, the lift isn't going to be aluminum, et cetera, et cetera.
Still stuff that's going to wear out.
They're giving us a snow job with that one.
So this is just an overview here. I encourage you guys to look that through at your leisure. The second one, and I apologize for the names, I'll try to rename them in a little bit. This one has 3 different models all in one sheet. So the first one is for the Super Duty Bookmobile. This is our current model. And the boxes there denote what are optional features. So we can pick our interior load space, our volume, if you will, chassis type, controls, curving. So this one starts at $165,000. I think that's it. Okay, and then I'm gonna scroll down. So if you get dizzy, look away. Okay. All right. On page 11 is the Venture Bookmobile. This is a slightly bigger model. Mom, what did I do with it? Maybe it's under here.
You got that.
Okay, it's the Venture Bookmobile. It is bigger. It starts at $225,000. And here are the options there. I'm giving you this information because if the full system board decides to keep with the rotating book model, I want us to know what all the options are and pick the best one for this service. And here you can see the floor plan and then the breakdown of the specs there. This model does not require a CDL to drive it, and our Super Duty, our current model truck model does not require a CDL either. The next model that I'm coming to is the M2 Bookmobile, which is basically the big brother version of our current model. This one does have a semi truck on the front of it, and it does require a CDL to run it. And this one starts at $190,000. You will see features on here that we don't use, like we don't get the awning and the outside book rack and stuff, because of course they're doing this is just a general start out quote here. Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this part? Okay, there's a question. What would you need to do to the $165,000 model? So that's, of course, the start out. There's other features on there. We would probably need to make sure that that air conditioner is up to snuff. The last time it was not. It was a different vendor, so we don't know, but that would probably be an additional cost there. This one is 165 is without the ramp, so we would need the motorized ramp, or not ramp, I'm sorry, lift. This is also without the solar panels, and that one, I see the need because it's used every time the lights are on in the box, so it's used every stop. But there might, I want to see what alternatives there are for that one. It might be that solar panels are the way to go. There's also the furnace, what kind of BTU we need. There's a roof-mounted one. There is also the heat strip, or for the different sizes of air conditioners. There's a 15,000 BTU and a 5,600, and we need to know which one would be working for that. Those are both different options for the truck. So look at those other ones there. Are there any other questions about that part? I did want to talk about collection expenditures. Gail briefly touched on that one. I don't know if I have that listed. I think I just came up with the numbers today. But we can go here. Okay, so the one question is, am I correct you would need to purchase a vehicle no matter what model is chosen? Yes, we need to replace the existing book mobile. It is, I'm hoping it will last to the end of this year, but we need to start planning. And that's why we're starting this discussion now,
Sure. Right now it has no resale value. If it were, say, 4 years old, we could advertise it nationally and maybe somebody would come to buy it or they wouldn't. But as a bookmobile right now, it has no resale value. Probably, you know, when we sold the old one, I think Ron said that he saw the old box somewhere and it was somebody's like hunting hut, something like that. Maybe a vendor somewhere in the state would be interested in purchasing the old one, but we don't get a turn-in cost and we don't get, there's not a resale value. So yes, we would have to start from scratch if everyone votes to keep the rotating system on a truck.
Right. And that's what spurred this discussion. If the truck was like thought it was going to last a few more years, we probably would be waiting to have this discussion until it was ready to replace. But since we're at that point, that's why we're bringing this to a vote in May. So the annual meeting that we're talking about is May 22nd at 1:30 p.m. is the business meeting, and it'll be in Russell at the Dole Spector Conference Center, which is right off the highway. So I'm going to talk about expenditures, and then I'll show you what I have here on the screen with you. So last year in 2018, for adult books, this is all genres in adult books, we spent $24,500. For juvenile, we spent $13,000. For YA, we spent $4,000. Audiobooks, we spent $4,750, and we also put almost $10,000 into e-content. So that's what we spent last year, and our collection budget this year is very similar to that. So we're putting about $56,000 into the collection. Okay, I'm going to minimize this.
Mary Beth,
Yes.
Karen has asked that you could send out the report numbers for the libraries to run to see how much of the rotating collection gets used in their libraries. And I said, that's actually, she did that for every library, and that's the spreadsheet she's sharing now. But
Yes.
Karen, Mary Beth will send that out after this webinar so you can run those numbers for yourself as well.
It's report number 1656 is the one that I used. So it gives all your circulation for a certain time frame, and what I'm looking for is it's by shelving location. So report 1656 has rotating book shelving location, and it gives me the numbers for each month. Each library that has a stop that's on Pathfinder, I have your numbers for. The other libraries aren't on Pathfinder, so I don't have their stats. We check out the books to them, and so that would give it would skew the stats into the rotating books favor. So those are why those are blank. Other libraries are not stops, so I mark those not as stops. I think it's very obvious when you look at the stats. You can kind of see, okay, we know when the truck comes into a lot of libraries because you have over 100 circulation one month, and the next month it's lower, and you can kind of tell when the truck comes in to stop. I have two numbers here because one is adding up the totals, and the other one I did the total for the whole year. That was to check my math and make sure that when I did each month, I didn't miss one. Like I have Belleville here, and I'm not sure why that number is there. So I'm gonna take that out. Anyway. This can kind of show you that some libraries are really using rotating books, and other libraries, the circulation is kind of small. Some libraries you expect small numbers. Randall has I think their registered patron count is 60, and their per capita or their population is 89. So I expect their numbers to be small. There's just not that many people to check things out. So I want to give you this information so that you can see usage on rotating books and see if this helps with the decision in a way. A lot of people say they like picking books off the truck, but some of the stats kind of show that they may be picking 250 books. We'll say 175 to 250, because I know it's not always 250, but those aren't always, I mean, that amount's not getting checked out from that library.
Unfortunately, data-driven decision-making can be exceedingly eye-opening, and when you see the statistics, it can be even sad, but I think that it's important that we do that. The state library now has to do that for their budget, and we can expect that that trickle-down comes with us. Schools have to do that for their budget. All government entities do. And we enter the library world because we have an emotional tug to helping people, and probably to books as well. but because taxpayer dollars are so precious to us, I hear sirens, we need to start looking at data to help us make decisions. And so this is one of the documents that will do it, to help us see, is this good?
And I'm writing down something here, so I apologize. Also, if you're thinking about this and you're like, I need some more information, please ask, because I can populate information. I can gather statistics for you. I would not only share it with you, but I would share it with the group as a whole, because I figure if one person is asking, several are having that question. They just haven't asked me yet. Okay, so those are the stats there. Any questions about that part? I see something just popped up. RV record. Okay, so Joanna's asking about adding more information to the rotating books MARC record. Which genres are being checked out at my library, not just how many total. There is a report that does by genre, I believe. In the information, all the genres are in the call numbers of rotating books. So there might be some reports that we can do to kind of get an idea of what's actually checking out at your library. That's a good idea. Let me make a note of it, or I'm going to forget to do it.
I think one of the things, and I do think that's a good idea, Joanna, one of the other things is that, remember that we also purchase for those patrons who aren't in our library yet. And when you pull off the trucks, I know that you pull a nice variety of things, because just maybe this one time that Western reader is going to read something else and you want to have something else for them. Data-driven decisions is awesome, but we could very much skew the information with statistics. Anybody can lie with statistics. It's actually quite easy. And what is important data to me is not important to the next person. So we've got to look at this huge picture, and that's why you may feel like you're getting inundated with information.
We're trying to give you as much information as we can, because we want you to feel confident going into the business meeting that what you vote for the rotating books is what's right for your library, for your fellow libraries, and for the system as a whole. Yeah, I think Joanna running a report before the truck comes in might help you select better. I think that's an excellent idea. We do have one library this year that has opted to do the drop-off model, and that is Lebanon. I was hoping Linda could join us today, but because of weather, she's unable to. So look for her email on Monday. She said she would give the group a kind of how she feels it's going. We had drop off in January, I believe, and she filled out a profile. We worked on it together, and she told me, okay, this worked and this didn't, and I'm making notes. I know that with the drop-off model, there's going to be, we're going to have some, there's going to be some growing pains, I guess is a good way to say that. It's not going to be perfect the first time you get a box. Like, hey, we checked out everything. But I think there's room to be flexible and to meet needs there. Denise asks, rotating books circ per item compared to annual budget costs less than $1 per item, not including those libraries not on Koha. Thank you for that information, Denise. I think that's very helpful. Okay, so we've talked about a drop-off model. Are there any questions about the drop-off model and what we've kind of laid out on that? I'll go over the basics. Is it this one? So we limit to the same amount as we did before, which is one book truck, one book cart full of books. So about 250 books. Still have 6 stops a year.
If you're a library that pulls less books, you don't suddenly, you're not tied to just getting 200 books. You can get, if you still only pull 50, you could still get 50. Right. What we need to base the numbers on is how many books will fit into our container, and we're not set on that yet, of course, because we don't know if this is a reality or not.
Right.
But yes, you can get
This is
less.
kind of an outline of the idea. And should the full system board vote for the drop-off delivery model, we would flesh this out more. But I'm hoping that this discussion will help us flesh this out really fully. And if you have some brilliant brainstorming idea of another way to do rotating book service, that you share that with us now so that we can, I would like to be able to go to the business meeting in May with 3 options to choose from. And I want those options to be fully defined and thought out so that everybody has a clear idea what each one would mean. Okay, so we're thinking with the drop-off model, 30 minutes at each stop for Ron. He would drop the books off that you're keeping for the month and pick up your other ones. The books that are dropped off would have your shelving, not your shelving, your library is the current location, so they would be shelf ready for you. We are looking at loading those in canvas bags and then a big wheeled cart to wheel those in and out. Those would be kept with your library, so they'd be folded up and you could store them away. And then the next time the truck comes through, you would bag up those books and they would be ready to go back on the truck.
The second,
Sherry, oh,
yes,
excuse me.
I'll
Sherry
just,
I'm going to turn mine on.
the second option then is to purchase a new truck, and Mary Beth has laid those out for you as what those look like. And then there would be another option as well. We have some good questions. Sherry at Ellenwood wants to know if we would be willing to pilot more libraries with the variety of sizes to see if drop-off is effective. And then Karen Wallace asked a question, and this is the reason that I popped in. I wanted to make sure that I answered this. Will the vote that the full system board takes in May, will that be the option, or does the executive board have the final say so? Karen, I'm gonna wax philosophically for just a minute. The full system board in the bylaws gives the executive board the power to run the library on the day-to-day basis. In the past, this whole discussion would never have gone to the full system board. It would have been handled in the director's office with the approval of the executive board. And to me, this is not a day-to-day operation. Getting books into your library is, but the model that we select is something that the full system board would operate on. And in that instance, the full system board has the final vote. The executive board is fully aware of these discussions. We have 2 library members on that board, but I've also been visiting with them every month about the ongoing discussion. So they're very much aware of what it is. And of course, they each have their own opinions, but the decision will be made by the full system board. What I'm hoping to have fleshed out by the end of February is what that rotating redesign ballot will look like. And we know that one is keep the truck, which would be buy a new truck, and on the ballot there will be a paragraph of options there and what that cost will look like. The other option is then to go to a drop-off model, and then there would be a paragraph explaining that. And then the last option is the only one that I see is even there, is to eliminate rotating entirely, and then I would have on the ballot a paragraph of what that would look like. The issue with eliminating rotating books entirely is that people are thinking that they're going to get part of that $200,000 for a new truck, and they're going to get part of the $50,000 for the materials budget every year. And it's much more complicated than that. If we don't have a service, we don't tax for it. And so that's something that it would take a lot of discussion for us to see what the future of those monies would look like. But as I said, if we are not offering the service, we won't be taxing for it. And Denise said, how does the circ per library compare to the number of items taken from the van each time it comes to the library? And Denise, for some libraries that is very low, and for some it is very high. And then her second question is, how far in advance of the spring meeting would the ballot be available for our boards to see? And that's why I want to have that ballot ready this month. We will send it out as a draft the first week of February, so boards can look at, March. So boards can look at that and have time to think about that. on our next step at CKLS, we're finalizing our proposal for the system plan for 2020. We're going to have a couple of webinars the first part of March for that, and we're going to get that to your boards. And so then boards can make the best decision and send their voting representative to the full system board in May with the vote that they want, so they can vote their conscience for what's best for their community, but what also is best for the system as a whole.
Okay, and I'm going to jump in.
Yes.
Sherry wanted to know if we'd be willing to pilot more libraries. I'm willing if the library is willing. I've had trouble getting any other libraries to say, okay, we'll try the delivery model. Lebanon was the first and the only one that's volunteered. So if anybody out there is willing to give it a go, I would be happy to work out that detail with you, and Ron will be a part of that as well. So yeah, if somebody's willing, we'll see what we can do. And thank you, Karen, for getting that clarified about the full system board having a say. I think that is very important. And right now, those are our three options, but if you have a brainstorm and you come up with a better third option, this is the time to bring it forward. Patty asks, if the option to eliminate rotating entirely wins, would that discontinuation occur when the truck dies or immediately after the vote?
And well, that would probably be immediately, except that because what we could do in the ballot, or it could be a proposal from the floor, is that this go into effect as soon as the truck dies. What happens then is that if the full system board votes to eliminate rotating books entirely, that's the big picture. So then what would happen is it would come back to the executive committee, who would come up with that process. And, this is a lot like policies and procedures. The procedure would come back to the day-to-day, which would be the director and the consultants and all of CKLS working with the executive board to find out how to effectively put that into place. Now, of course, if we vote on Wednesday and the truck dies on Thursday, it's going to go to place immediately. But what that means then is that the CKLS staff would be scrambling to make it happen. I have instructed Mary Beth that after today, she's not to think about this much anymore, because she needs to move on with the next part of her job, which is planning more things. We've put a lot of thought and discussion and things like that into this. I really, really do welcome a more discussion on the emails. I think we reach a lot more people. Not everybody's here on the webinar, and we know that some people don't care. So I don't have an answer for you, Patty. And what we would also have to do then is decide, if we voted to eliminate it, what we would do with the books. There's a whole bunch of procedural things that would be there. Okay, I need to stop for a little bit.
Okay, so we do have several libraries that have said they'd be willing to try the drop-off. So I'll be in touch with you. Ron and I will be in touch with you about that. Jessica asks, we would be willing to try the drop-off, but want to know where the savings from changing RB would go. And so yes, that will be something we will put in that packet about. So if we move to the drop-off model, where will those savings go?
And apologize, I had to put a mint in my throat. But what that would really do, Jessica, is we would probably be able to really lower the mill levy, unless the boards decided we want to keep the mill levy high and we want to put this money elsewhere.
Right, so we would levy for that differently. Yeah, we would change the budget accordingly as well. Erica says, I do not believe that elimination should even be an option. We love RB and truly appreciate it. Does this have to be a choice?
Erica, it doesn't have to be a choice. And sorry, I have a mint again. But some libraries have voiced that as an option that they would be wanting to have on the ballot. And so because CKLS is member driven and member governed, we need to honor that and put it on the ballot. That doesn't mean that anybody has to vote for it. And I know it's scary to think about having it on the ballot. but I think that the number of libraries in the system benefit from rotating books in one way or another.
Ramey's appreciating the change in decision making for the system, and I'm glad that it's working. I'm hoping to see this continue. And then Jessica says, we had rotating books before we hiked up the mill. Yes, we had rotating books before we hiked up the mill, but what we also did is we have expenditures. If we're not spending as much in rotating books, we don't need to levy. Our budget would reflect that appropriately. We're not going to budget the same amount for rotating book service. So we could look at other ways to grant that money.
One of the things,
go ahead.
Right, and Mary Beth is right. One of the things that we're looking at adding into the system plan for 2020 is something that the consultants and I recognize that we have a need for, and that is materials grants, larger amount and more often, and the executive board agreed. And so one of the things that we're writing into the proposed plan for 2020 is an annual materials grant. Every library needs to apply for it, $1,000, probably no local match. And so that's one of the things that we realize needs to, we can add money to as well. But yes, there are lots of ways to reallocate that money. One of the things that rotating does is it does put books on the truck. It puts about $35,000 worth of books into your library if you pull 250 to 300. But what it also does is you have, boy, and I hate to say this, professional librarians, but we are trained in collection development, and we purchase about $50,000 that actually goes into Pathfinder, and our libraries benefit from that as well. So there would be a lot of decision making, and I appreciate so much that you are interested and you're taking this seriously and you're involving yourself in this decision making. I think it's needed. We've needed to do this for a long time.
Okay, we're getting close to the time now, but I wanted to share with you, I thought I had this in the folder and I can't seem to find it, so I'll make sure it's in there when I post the archive of this meeting. But this is what we've spent on the truck itself in the last 3 years, 2017, 2016, and 2015. So what Denise writes is, one of the joys of the RB service is that we don't have to purchase and house items permanently and can get an always changing collection. I agree. I really like the rotating book service. I think it's an awesome service that we provide. But I don't want to just keep doing things the same way because we haven't fully investigated all our options. And so this is a challenging question. This is a tough discussion, but I think it's something that we just really need to fully vet out. So I'm going to open it up for any questions, and we'll try to answer them the best of our ability.
And as always, if it's something that you would rather ask one-on-one, shoot us an email and we'll be glad to answer it. You can certainly call us, but with an email, it gives us a little bit of a track record, and we can anonymize your question and add it to the frequently asked questions, because as they always say, if you're asking, there are other people who are asking but just aren't brave enough to do. We really value and need your input. I hear Ron's phone.
Okay, so we do have a couple. We have Steve is saying what the mill levy has been in the last few years, and so I'll let you guys read that one. And then Joanna adds, I can't afford to purchase enough CDs and playaways for my patrons on our budget. I love the opportunity to choose genres or items that don't warrant spending local money, but I always find serendipitous treasure every time one comes. So that's a great discovery thing. I would like to think that when you do the delivery thing, it's kind of like Christmas every other month, where you get to pick out all these great treasures from the box. And that's my ideal. And I know that life isn't ideal, but I can kind of see that would be kind of fun as well, pulling those books out of the bags. And Margie also notes that if libraries are curious about the age of their collection, she has a report for that, and she shared the number there. It's report number 1724. Erica says that I feel we wouldn't need an additional materials grant when we can utilize ILL and the rotating books and swap out books to refresh our selections. So,
Erica, I would like, in my dream world, that would be the case, but we do have some libraries whose total collection budget for the year for everything is under $500, and the bulk of our libraries are those small libraries. And so not everybody has as robust a collection budget as you do a materials budget, but I agree that having that ILL and rotating books, those are valuable services. More questions, please, or more comments especially.
I don't know where it's going. I'll have to find out.
Jessica, I agree about not having to compete for it. What I was thinking is that there would be enough money every other year for half of the libraries to get a nice chunk to add to their collection. When Margie gave the report 1724 for the age of the collection, I think that a lot of people would be surprised by that. I know that when we go and weed books, we're weeding things that haven't circulated in a long, long time, and some of this stuff is just really old, and that's one of the reasons it's not used. And so having that extra little shot in the arm for collection would be really nice.
Thank you, Sherry, for joining us. I'm glad that you found it useful. I hope everybody did as well. And Ramey's saying Lincoln County paid over $100,000 in 2018 and 2017 for the system mill levy. So a community face for CKLS cannot be underestimated. And I agree. I think that the rotating book truck is an excellent phase for that. But I also think that if we do the drop-off model, we'll still have a rotating book truck. It just will be a different model.
Right. Mary Beth, I want to make sure we get Amy's question. Amy from, there she is, Amy from Otis. Can a simplified breakdown of the 3 options be available to share with our board members? And Amy, yes, I'm hoping to send that out the first week in March, with sort of a draft ballot so people will know what they're voting on. And speaking of voting, be sure you mail in the voting representative's name and contact information. And Denise, yes to both of those. A local match must be, it's not a local match, but it's maintenance of effort. Yes, you can get a non-competitive grant, but that doesn't mean you can lower your budget for that to make that happen. Yes, Ramey, one of the things that we could also send out is how much each county pays for CKLS over the course of the year. Lincoln County in 2018 and 17 paid over $100,000. In January of this year, Barton paid $172,000. Ellis County paid $195,000, and Saline County paid $188,000. So we definitely want to keep that face of CKLS out there. Karen, you're welcome. And Patty, thank you. I think one of the questions that it's a hard question we have to ask ourselves is, if this were my money, if every library had to contribute money to purchase a new truck, I think a rough estimate would be it would be $7,000. Local communities don't have that money. And one of the things that I ask myself is, if this were my money, is this a decision that I would make? And those are questions that you can ask yourself and have your board ask to help you come up with a good decision that actually takes a lot of emotion out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had a great discussion as well. If you felt like something did not get answered, but you want to ask us privately, please send us an email. You can send it to Ron, you can send it to me, you can send it to Gail. What we're probably going to do is we're going to share it among the 3 of us anyway. So, you know, don't.
Yeah, we each have a different area of expertise, and you get the best answer when we share.
And Ron's been pretty quiet this meeting, but we've been sharing all the information with him as we do this. He's been sitting in all the meetings where we discuss options. So he may be quiet, but he is very much a part of the planning process. So here's a good comment from Joanna from Smith Center. Every time, as far as CKLS being seen in the public, every time I have a farmer in the library complaining about the CKLS mill levy, I ask, would you like to see how their money is used? And I show them rotating items, show them youth services resources, tell them about story hour and summer reading. Then I thank them for supporting our library. You should be surprised how impressed most of them are about what we do with their tax money. That is so awesome, Joanna. I'm so glad you're being our advocate there. That's awesome.
That is wonderful.
That is wonderful. I also want to make sure that we have out there that we have books by mail for our rural patrons as well. And if you need books by mail flyers, we can send some more out to you.
You know, Joanna, that paragraph that you typed there is fantastic. And that is at the crux of most of our decision making at CKLS is this the best use of our taxpayer dollars? Because we know how hard those rural people work for those dollars. And we really want to make sure that they're getting a good value for that, and being more transparent through this whole process and actually involving the full system board is something that I'm determined to carry on with. And I think that as libraries, you'll be more involved in the decision making. We didn't really have time this year, but we're going to have more active participation when we prepare the system plan. I think that that's what we need to do. And I really, again, I want to thank you all. You've just been marvelous, and I really like that you are participating in this.
Yes, thank you everybody for participating. I'm going to share Joanna's last comment, and then I think we're going to end it there. Joanna says, I also remind them that if they want to get their money's worth, they could try checking out some books, movies, etc. they paid for. And my comment is, you paid for it, wouldn't you like to benefit it? And then Patty also adds, you are all brave, you're all strong, you're all amazing. Thank you for the amazing work you do for your patrons and communities. This is the hard work of being a librarian, a title you all have, and I'm proud of you and the work you do. Thank you, Patty. Yes, you guys are awesome, and we really appreciate you giving your honest opinions. And even if it sounds like you're disagreeing with us, that's what we need. We need the views from all sides. So I really appreciate that. Is there anything else to add, Gail?
I'm done. I thought I was done before, but I think I'm really done for now.
Okay.
And we're available.
Yeah, we're available for email and phone calls. We want to talk to you about this. The next webinar we have is on Tuesday the 19th, which is next Tuesday. I think that's the 19th, which is writing grants, and we'll talk about how to write good grants, not only for CKLS, but for other entities out there in the world that you might want to grant from. So thank you, and have a great day, and this will be archived, and I will post it as soon as I can. Thank you. Stop sharing.